Tim, and welcome to WatchYouWant.com. Thanks for logging on. The Audemars Piguet Royal Oak is an icon, but it's an icon that comes in many flavors. Like the Tootsie Roll, it's basically a texture latent with potential. It can be complicated, uncomplicated. It can be elaborated, as it is in the case of this day-date. It can be gold, it can be steel, it can be platinum. And in this case, Audemars Piguet has taken one of the most unconventional spins on its classic. This is the full-flavored Tootsie Roll Rainbow, if you might want to use an analogy from Tootsie Roll history, because this one combines unconventional yellow gold on a watch originally designed in a base metal steel. It combines a complicated movement on a watch originally designed with a time only, in fact, hours and minutes only, dial, and it combines a mid-size case with a shape that was originally designed for 39 millimeters. So let's break it down and see exactly what this watch, which is an iconic early reference, brings to the table. Now, in the early 1980s, we began to see the first complicated Royal Oaks. Originally designed in 1972 by the legendary stylist Gerald Genta, the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, as we discussed, started out stainless steel, 39 millimeters, and simple. By 1981, AP was ready to step out a little bit and elaborate with a perpetual calendar. So they went big right off the bat, but they also wanted to make sure complications were widely available to their traditional customer base, as no Royal Oaks were cheap. Even the basic steel model retailed for the price of a nice car at the time. So they added a complicated variant with a day-date and moonphase feature in 1984. So that's the year I was born. This watch joins the scene. This is the reference 25594BA, yellow gold, 18 karat, 36 millimeter, day-date with moonphase. Now what this watch brings to the table is the famed JLC base movement. This is the Audemars Piguet caliber 2124 with the Dubois Depraz day-date moonphase module 2810. So you have one of the greatest ultra-thin self-winding movements of all time, based on that original Audemars used in the Royal Oak of 1972, harnessed to a module by one of the premier complication specialists in Switzerland, all of it assembled and finished to Audemars Piguet standards, and rendered in the form of the classic octagonal bezeled, white gold bezel belt, integrated bracelet Royal Oak. So now the basic Royal Oak includes one of the most finely finished cases and bracelets in the history of watchmaking. It was the first luxury watch to fully integrate a metal bracelet with a metal case. And although previous, for instance, Rolex models had bracelets that joined with the case, it's not the same thing as integration, because what you have here is a taper and a repetitive pattern that literally joins seamlessly with the lugs. Using the same plot links, one flows into the other. There's no awkward stamped end link that joins the two together in somewhat contrived fashion as it does on the Rolex. This is literally unitary design, one designed with the other for the other in the mind of the same man, and unified by a beautiful sort of corresponding finish with the polish of the lug shoulders flowing into the flanks of the bracelet, the brush of the tops of the lugs flowing seamlessly down the links, and of course that iconic octagonal bezel with a visible gasket buffering between it and the case, defining it all. All of these bolts are white gold, and they always have been. The bolts in a Royal Oak will always be a precious metal, and they are countersunk into the case. So the key to this watch is the integration of its design and its semi-industrial aesthetic, exposing its bolts, exposing its gasket, and the fact that it's all metal makes it a sort of cohesive vision, still as elegant today as it was in 72, and then that elaboration preserves the symmetry of the dial while adding additional beauty, the romance of a moonphase, the practicality of a day-date. It's a very rugged combination because you have JLC finished by Audemars Piguet in tandem with Dubois Depraz, all outstanding machinery on the inside. This watch is as beautiful as it is on the outside, and in a 36 millimeter case with, I will say, kind of broad, full-figured lugs, it wears very well on a 6 1/3 inch wrist like mine, even a little bit bigger. On the wrist, it's about the size of a 40 millimeter Rolex. So if you're comfortable with late model Submariners, Milgauss, if you've worn the lately reissued 40 millimeter Rolex Sea Dweller, if you've worn a Daytona, you know the look and the feel and the size and the fit, and you're likely to be comfortable with it. Although this watch is technically a mid-size Royal Oak, Royal Oaks tend to wear a little big just because of the size of the lugs and the integration with the bracelet. So again, on a 6 1/3 inch wrist, 16 centimeters for metric friends, this watch fits well, it feels great, and it looks a treat. Plus, I find with yellow gold, it has such a huge visual signature that you really don't need size to achieve presence. And when you have something with as much character and history and recognition as the Royal Oak, you don't have to go out of your way to make a statement. This watch makes it for you. That famous petite tapisserie dial that you see here, the sort of hobnail cut made on a traditional pantograph engraving mechanism, actually produced by Stern Creations. There's a lot of interesting content in here from without Audemars Piguet. That JLC, a Bosch, the Dubois Depraz module, and yes, a Stern Creations dial. Yes, those Sterns of Patek Philippe. They were originally dial manufacturers who were the major suppliers to Patek Philippe. Thus, they bought the company to sustain it during the Depression, but they continued making dials, and until 2012, Audemars Piguet was one of their largest customers with the Royal Oak and Royal Oak offshore dials, and that's what you're seeing here. So tremendous history, tremendous heritage, and so many great stories go into this watch. Now, this reference, the day-date, was produced from the early 80s through the mid-2000s, well-regarded, well-loved. It was an enduring reference. It is every inch a true Royal Oak, and as watches go, it's tremendously practical, because what day do you not need to know the day or the date? This is an everyday complication that's ready when you are. Always practical. Again, bilateral symmetry and vertical symmetry on the dial. It doesn't spoil Gerald Genta's classic Royal Oak lines. If anything, it only enhances it. And the romance of the moon phase is undeniable. If you were watching SIHH this year, you saw that one of the great trends for 2015 is moon phase watches. So you can kind of go back to the future with this Audemars Piguet Royal Oak mid-size day-date reference 25594. Available from watchyouwant.com in outstanding condition. See it on our website, watchyouwant.com. If you're into icons, if you're into complications, if you want to get ahead of the curve and get on the moon phase bandwagon for 2015, you can't do any better than this Royal Oak mid-size day-date. It just might be the watch you want.